Welcome to the Limelight podcast, where authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders step forward to share their ideas, stories, and strategies. I'm Clarissa Burt, inviting you into thoughtful dialogue, refined insight, and an esteemed way of living. And we are back in the limelight with yet another extraordinary author and entrepreneur. Lots going on here. So let me just give you an overview of what's going on. This gentleman has inspired audiences with the truth about business purpose and the journey to rainbow gold. Here's his book right here. So we're going to be referring to that quite a bit in our chat. And Rainbow Gold really is about building a business. It's both a journey and a destination. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on David Hampson. There he is. Yay.
Hello, Clarissa. How are you doing today?
Hi. Well, one of the most important things I think we need to mention is that you are in the plane insurance business. Apart from writing books, I don't know how you found the time, but that's pretty extraordinary. You sent me your card, and that's really kind of cool. So we'll talk about that too. I did want to understand better, though, what it means from, the business's journey and the destination, which is really, really cool because obviously with planes, we're always arriving at our destination, right?
That's right, exactly.
Give me a little background on that.
Yeah, so basically it's a concept that when you're building a business, it's building it to last. It's taking more of a, long-term approach of, creating something that's a legacy, that's meaningful, right, not only to yourself and to your family, but to your community. And it's something that's gonna it's built to last, basically, as opposed to like these days, most of the media sensationalizes the concept of like scaling up fast, the hustle culture. Let's get to an exit. Let's get a big exit multiple.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody kind of wants to get to the destination, but I don't know if there's that big of a hurry. What is? Let's start with the scale to sell myth. What is the scale to sell myth?
Well, that's the myth that to be defined as a successful business owner, entrepreneur, that's, you need to scale it up to get to that exit. Now, you need to have some sort of end game, of course, because, not everyone's not going to live forever. At some point, someone might want to retire,
sure,
but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to scale something fast to have an exit. You could, for example, alternatives to that are obviously perpetuating a business to your family if your family ends up being involved in it.
Yeah.
Or you could create an employee stock ownership program where eventually you could perpetuate to your employees and continue that culture that you had in the business that you had. Or we could find somebody who's had similar values to you that wanted to buy it from you and perpetuate it that way. Maybe it would be a key employee that was working for you or someone from the outside that came in, but it's not the only way. And I think the problem with the scale to sell a mindset is that it ends up affecting culture in a negative way, and that you don't want to invest in your employees and developing them. You don't necessarily want to do the hard things it takes to build culture, because building a good culture is a long, slow process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Sure.
And that's, because that when you're just thinking about, a top line growth and bottom line profitability and try to get the highest number and maximizing that, you're not going to take the time to do those other things that create a great company that lasts.
Yeah. Moving on, in your book, you talk about burned out but successful, ? I mean, is it really worth the burnout? I guess is what you're talking about. All that success, is it really worth what you have to go through to get it?
Right. And then also too, like, let's say that you do that. Say, okay, fine. You get a very profitable business, you exit, and you may be really excited. You got a big payout. When you wake up the next day, is that you gain that? You have great satisfaction? It's a quick adrenaline rush, but I mean, have you really created something that's been meaningful, to beyond just, getting a lot of money? Is it meaningful in your life and other people's lives? Is that something you can feel good about? I mean, maybe some people, the money's enough, but for a lot of people, it isn't.
Yeah. And then I guess it's always, now what?
Exactly. What you do next. Yeah. I mean, obviously you're going to want to move on to something else perhaps, but, but then, it can, for a lot of business owners, a business is such an important part of your identity as well. And when you can perpetuate that and create a legacy with it, it's a beautiful thing. That's how you can almost get to a sense of like self-actualization in your life when you've been able to, do something that's been successful, not just financially, that's part of it, but also successful in making such a difference in people's lives. I mean, it's amazing as a business owner when you can see one of your employees that started with you at a certain point and see them grow in their career and become more financially successful and more confident and just, be more happy in their life, by working in your company. That's just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. And I guess it's really, we could say it's really like an exit strategy for business, but a reentrance strategy for in your life, right? Because you
Right,
put so much
exactly.
into the business, it's like, again, great, sold it, big payout. Now what? And so have we taken the time to really understand what's going to be next? And that's really important, I think, as we move into our latter years, that we want to really live them in fulfillment, and happily. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's a whole nother show probably. But anyway, all right. So moving right on. This I really needed some more explanation on this. Why the move fast and break things would get you grounded in aviation.
Well, in aviation, there's many things that we have and we do that are, they're meant to manage risk. So risk management's a huge thing. Obviously,
Sure.
insurances as well, but we have
Yeah.
checklists to make sure everything's working on the airplane. There's redundant systems as well if something breaks. So if you just ignore the checklist, you could have catastrophic effects. And I've seen many insurance claims as a result of that. But a lot of times in business, we're talking about that hustle culture, that skill to fast to exit. You're
Hmm.
just moving at such a breakneck pace that if you're not, your company could break. You might make bad decisions. You might make decisions too fast. You're not paying attention to culture, employees, and you might make it, but your business might break as well. And I see so many companies that are so focused on scaling up top line revenue
Yeah.
that in the hope that they're going to get someone else to buy it.
Right.
And maybe 5 years down the line, they're not even expected to be profitable, but they have a high top line revenue number. And if someone decides not to buy them, they're not making any money, and eventually they're just going to fail, and they're going to fall apart, and they're moving so fast something's going to break. And that's contrary to, of course, what we do in aviation. So I think sort of like thinking of that sort of aviation pilot's mindset of like, let's make sure that let's take one step at a time.
Systems.
Let's go
Yeah.
through the checklist, make sure we're doing all the things we need to do, to give us the best chance possible we can be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. The 5 ingredients of sustainable success in business are what, David?
Glad you asked that, because I came up with an acronym, and it's PRIME. I've since added one though, so we should just recently changed to Primer, and I'll tell you what those are.
Should we
So
make them 6 then? We can
it
make them
should be
6. That's
6 now. We'll make it 6 because things are always evolving, right? And I'm always evolving too. So I had this one that I missed, so I added and changed to 6. So
Okay.
the first one is passion for P,
Right.
and I do believe that it's really important to be passionate. If you're going to embrace a business and have it for the long term, you want to be passionate. That's important. That's
Right.
not the only thing. I mean, people have plenty of passions and they can't make a good business out of it, but passion helps you get through the hard times. Want to
Hmm.
keep going. The
Right.
next one, R, is risk management, and that's having kind of what I talked about before, having a risk management mindset.
Hmm.
It does not mean avoiding risk, not at all, but it means
Right.
thinking about what sort of risks are acceptable.
What
What's your
could
risk
go? How about
tolerance?
what could go wrong?
Right, could go wrong, exactly. And is that what could go wrong? Is that a tolerable level of risk for you based
Right.
on where you are? And that can be
Sure.
different between different people, and it can be different in different phases of your life. But risk
Sure.
management mindset is something you have to think about. The I is interpersonal relationships, critical, and by
So
that I
important.
mean, yeah, so
So important.
important.
Yeah.
Relationships with your employees, with your
Hmm.
vendors, with your customers, clients. You need to have that. And, I think a lot of business owners understand that, but some people don't recognize how important that is.
Yeah.
The people that will be there for you, if you're there for them and you have that sort of partnership with all of those
The
folks,
banks,
all the
potentially even
stakeholders.
the bank.
Banks,
Right.
banks are a huge one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And then M is money sense. Money sense refers to accounting principles, tax strategy, sales, and any business that's important. A lot of people, I think, sometimes they're really good in a specific field, like experts in their field, but they don't have the money sense, and then they end up making some mistakes. They don't know how to run the financial side of
Oh
things. So if
yeah.
you don't know, that's okay. Just learn
Well.
it. Like, there's plenty of resources. You
Yeah.
can get mentors, you can take courses, but you need to know accounting principles, money, sales.
Right.
And then the other E is environment, and that is having a healthy culture within your company.
Hmm.
It's also purging toxicity. Like, you could have toxic employees or even toxic
Sure.
clients. Not every
Yeah.
client is a good client. That's sometimes early in business. That's hard to know that, to understand that. But it's purging the toxicity in your organization and
Yeah.
creating a positive culture, the environment. And the
Sure.
last
Yeah.
one that I missed was that I've now added is
Right.
resilience, and
Ah.
that's grit, having a growth mindset. Having the capacity to keep going, when things are difficult to get back up.
A
You know,
friend of
that's
mine, a
critical.
friend of mine would call it the stick-to-itiveness.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way to describe it. And I think any successful business person has that to some extent, because you're gonna, no matter what business you have, you're gonna face tough times, and you
Yeah.
need
Oh,
to
yeah.
have that mindset to be able to go through it and learn from your mistakes. Right, you're gonna make some terrible
Right.
mistakes, and
Right.
you can let that affect you in a negative way, or you can say, you know what, let me take what I've learned from this and use it to catapult me to something better.
Sure. Let me go back to your original P for passion. What makes you passionate about plane insurance?
Well, I'm very passionate about it because I love aviation. So I've always loved flying since I was a young boy, and I didn't take flying lessons when I was younger, but I always loved airplanes. And then one time in about 15 years ago, my wife, who knew I loved aviation, she got me 3 gift certificates for some flying lessons, and
Oh,
that
fun.
reignited my youthful passion. And I kept going and got my pilot certificate. I was already in insurance at the time, and
Right.
then I thought, well, how can I combine this and take my knowledge of insurance with my passion for aviation? That's what led me hence to aviation insurance. But I mean, it's great. I have a small airplane. It's called the Cirrus SR-22. It's a five-seater.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire,
Okay. Very good.
in the Northeast. And when I fly it up and down the East Coast, I'll fly from Portsmouth,
So
New
fun.
Hampshire, all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in it sometimes. So
Just too
it is
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, oh,
I get to visit my
yeah.
clients and going there with fam. It's really fun. Yeah.
Absolutely really fun. But so I would think that you'd be really, kind of the passion piece would be keeping people safe in the air. That would be
Well,
good.
that's also I'm
Yeah.
passionate about that too. I mean, that's what's rewarding. That's what's rewarding
Yeah.
is what I do is providing people that protection, and knowing that they can have the peace of mind
Yeah.
when they're operating aircraft, having an aviation business, they're going to be protected, and
Yeah.
even giving clients the risk management advisory services of telling them,
Mhm.
like, sometimes they'll talk about, what can you do to improve your safety to avoid an insurance claim? What sort of
Yeah.
things can we implement? We talk a lot about that as well.
This is very interesting moving forward. Is why most corporate DEI programs are performative theater. And you say what?
I say that most of them have been, because they don't necessarily really have it ingrained in their culture. It's somewhat controversial, I understand, but you look at, like, a few years ago when all these companies, it was a popular thing to do to have these DEI programs. All these companies implemented this, and they had DEI officers and departments and this and that.
And
But had
pilots.
they did
That
pilots too,
was
that was
the
part of it
scary
too.
part when
Yeah.
somebody said, "Do you really want a DEI pilot?" And you want a guy up there that knows what he's doing. Two guys up there
Well,
that
that's the
are
thing,
well,
and it's so it's but they were doing it because it was what was popular and what was perceived to
yeah,
be something they should be doing it to look good. Or what. But had they really changed anything in their culture and done it in the right way? And that's and I don't think they had, because then a couple years later, there's changes of politics, administrations, and suddenly they're getting rid of all of that. None of them have it anymore, and they fire the people, they get rid of the people that were doing. The departments are shut down. It's
right.
like, well, did you have that DI in your culture, or did you not? Like, why is it all going away now? So I do believe it's important. Like, I do believe in the concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, and finding ways to promote people, and
In
let
an
people
equitable way,
bring up and
sure.
be an equitable way,
Right.
exactly, and give people those opportunities, absolutely. But should be something that you do because part of your culture, not something you have to be performative about. You have to be perform. If you have to convince someone too hard,
Yeah.
then it's like, why do you protest so much? Like,
Exactly.
why are you trying? Who are you trying to
Exactly.
convince? Like, so it's something that's internal that you do, and that's what I think is missed. And sometimes it becomes window dressing instead of something that's real, is what it should be.
Right. One Okay, moving on. We've got something you said, insurance is the DNA of capitalism. I love the way you word things. It's good. This one especially, I'm going, let me think about that a second. But what you say is why modern economics, entrepreneurship, and innovation wouldn't exist without risk transfer.
Yes. Yeah. And if you think about it, think of all the things in your life, right? So think about driving your car, or starting any sort of business, manufacturing a product, attorneys practicing law, doctors practicing medicine. If there was no insurance, how could they afford the risk of loss? If they were
Sure.
sued and something went wrong.
Right.
Mortgage companies wouldn't give you a loan to buy a house, let
Right.
alone a loan to buy a business. So it's kind of glue that keeps the economy together by allowing risk sharing, so that collectively a large group of people is sharing in the risk of life or the risk of business, so that you can sleep, you have peace of mind and sleep at night knowing if the worst possible happens, you have that backstop to protect you with that insurance.
Yeah. Well, it would also be nice if insurance, companies would ramp up a little bit their payouts, but
Yeah,
that's another show also.
yeah, that's definitely the topic. We can talk about that one
That's
time.
a whole other show, right? All right, is your 401k actually your worst investment?
Yeah, another somewhat controversial statement, I know. So that's specifically with business owners I'm referring to. Now, employees, it's a little bit different. But for a business owner, if you're putting lots of money into 401k, it's probably not going to be do nearly as well as if you invest it in your own business. If your business is a good business that's doing well. Give you a
Right.
quick example of that. Let's say, for example, that you're doing an advertising campaign, right? And you invested a bunch of money in that. All that would be tax deductible, just like a 401k. There'd be no limits on it. If it increased your revenue and your profitability, the enterprise value of your business would go up, and you wouldn't have to pay taxes on that increased business value until you sold it. So it'd be tax deferred increase in value, just like a 401k is. And whatever profits it generated each year from
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
you can either pull those profits out and use them and distribute them to yourself,
Yeah.
or you can reinvest them again and get the tax deduction and grow your business more. You have that
Right.
flexibility, right? Versus having all those restrictions where you can't do anything with it until you reach retirement age, and if you do, you get penalized. And of course, there's fees on 401ks for the investment managers. So yeah, business owners. So I mean, I myself personally, I've done so much better reinvesting in my business than I could in a 401k. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm referring to in that, and it has all the same benefits tax wise. Again, as long as your business is a good business, if it's not making money, it's not doing well, then it could be a different story.
Do you really need to go to business school to be an entrepreneur, David?
Absolutely not. I didn't. I studied all science courses in school. I would study
Exactly.
physiology and nothing. I've never taken a single course in accounting or finance or marketing. Nothing.
Excuse me, nor
But
have
you
I.
do. Yeah. You have,
Nor have I.
so
No.
you understand that, right? But you do need to have certain areas that you try to master, and I talked about some of those in my primer acronym. You need to know what you don't know and learn it. A lot of times you can learn a lot more practically by doing it outside of business school. Some of it could be running a small business. My first business was a restaurant I ran in South Africa, and I would say that was my business school. I learned everything
Wow,
about business
cool.
doing that.
I've
And
never been there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a beautiful place,
Yeah.
amazing country. But that's how I learned a lot, and I always continue to educate myself. And I've worked with some people before who've been to business school, or even if who've had an MBA, and I found that even though they have that education, a lot of times they have a lot of trouble applying that to the actual real world running a small business. Most business schools are designed to teach people to be a good corporate drone, and not actually to really practically, be chief cook and bottle washer when you start running a small business and
Yeah.
have all the different things you have to do.
No doubt. So good debt versus bad debt. Why is bad debt is bad as dangerous advice? Is debt is bad?
Yeah, yeah. So that's dangerous advice because for the consumers, of course, that can be consumer debt can be bad, of course, but for businesses, that leverage is critical because if you just take this no debt mentality and try to save up like paycheck by paycheck to buy a business or start something, you'll probably never be able to start the business you want to start. And whereas if you can use the leverage with debt, you could get a 20% for a down payment and then have a bank finance 80% of it and leverage that to have a business that could eventually, when you pay off that debt, you'll have a huge asset, and get into it much sooner. And I've used good debt a lot through my career, and it's been so valuable. Like you mentioned, the bank is such an important partner. If you're a good banking partner,
Yeah.
and you can get grow your business, and as you're paying off that loan, you're building equity that you could never do if you're just trying to save it up. And as long as a business generates enough profit or cash flow to service the debt and have enough excess to also provide income for you too, then it's essentially a money tree, right? You're using other
Yeah.
people's money to create that asset for yourself, and you're able to pay it off and generate excess beyond that. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a beautiful thing. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Of course, different though if you're buying consumer products, you buy expensive car or something else, so expensive vacations, you're taking credit card debt. That's a totally different story, not what I'm
Yeah.
talking about here. But people sometimes have trouble distinguishing between those two.
Yeah. So let me remind everybody again. There you go. It's Rainbow Gold. There's his book, Building a Business That's Both the Journey and the Destination. And you say this is really a blueprint for something that is real and something that lasts. What's next for you, David?
Well, I would love to just to work with more business owners to help them understand these concepts I've spoken about. So I started a consulting company called Rainbow Gold Advisors to help other business owners. I also offer some board of directors services on a select basis to private companies. So that I'm continue growing my company. And I love, obviously, I love my aviation insurance business. We're going to keep growing that,
Right.
like on that trajectory as well. And maybe there'll be a second book as well. I started thinking about it. The first book was more aspirational, inspirational, and I've already thought of a second book, which would be Rainbow Gold: How to Build a Business That's Both the Journey and the Destination.
There you
It'll
go.
be more of a how-to guide to sequel to.
There you go. So where can everybody find your book, Rainbow Gold?
You can find my book on Amazon, of course. That's probably the best place to get it. Barnes & Noble as well. I also have a website, which is www.myrainbowgold.com, and you can find it on there, as well as contact information for me also.
Very good. The very last question, and I ask this of most of my guests, especially the entrepreneurs, and you cannot answer marriage and you cannot answer children. But up until now, what would you say has been the crowning moment in your life? The crowning moment?
I would say the crowning moment in my life is when was the day that we signed the purchase and sale agreement for the business that we have today, the aviation insurance business, because I just remember that day.
Wasn't the day you got your first plane?
It wouldn't even be that, because that was an important date. That probably rank as like the number 2 after marriage, kids, and this.
Sure.
But that, because I knew that I was going into something. I wanted to have my own business in this space of aviation insurance. And it was like a dream come true, combining my passion with an area I had a lot of experience in. And I just had the sense that, unlike the first business venture I had that was a restaurant, I did have a sense from the very beginning, this was going to be successful. This was going to be something that's going to become the pinnacle of my career and just catapult me to success, because I felt like I couldn't go wrong with something that I was so passionate about. And it's proven to be true. Now it's 11 years later. So yeah, I will never forget that day, that night that we signed that purchase and sale agreement. And I was just on cloud 9.
That was it. Just pinch me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody, again, David Hampson, there's his book, Rainbow Gold. And he's already told you where you can find it. David, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate great information, great advice. Let me know if you write the second book. We'll see each other again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Clarissa. I enjoyed it.
Bye, David. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the In the Limelight podcast, intelligent media for the savvy entrepreneur. You'll find my video interviews on YouTube and clarissaburt.com, and the audio version of the interviews you can get wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to connect with me on social, pretty much anywhere, and do stay well until we meet again in the Limelight.